Look, guys, let's just get this out of the way right at the start because it's the most uncomfortable truth you're going to hear about personal growth. And honestly, I'm telling you, it's the key to everything. Your subconscious honestly doesn't care what you want. It doesn't. You can write down your goals, you can do your vision boards, you can affirm until your voice is hoarse, you can meditate on it for 5 hours a day, and the deep structure of your mind, the place that actually runs your day-to-day reality, is just shrugging. It only cares about one thing, folks: what you keep tolerating in your life. I know, that stings a little. And I want to be super clear right now. This isn't about blaming you for being where you are. We've all been there. This isn't a judgment on your current circumstances. This is an explanation. This is the missing piece that clarifies why so many honest, intelligent, hardworking people who are genuinely doing the work, reading the books, going to the seminars, really putting in the effort, still feel like they're running on a treadmill. They feel stuck. They feel that heavy, invisible friction between their expressed desire, what they consciously want, and their lived reality, the life they wake up to every day. The gap, guys, is tolerance. See, desire is a conscious, momentary frequency. It's a wish, a hope, an aspiration, and it lives in the logical, verbal part of your mind. But tolerance, on the other hand, is the bedrock of identity. It's a physical, energetic, lived signal. When you stay in a situation that you say you hate, when you keep accepting the low standard in your finances, when you keep returning to that toxic relationship pattern, when you let a certain level of stress become the background hum of your life, you are sending a signal to the subconscious mind that is infinitely louder and deeper than any affirmation you could ever utter. You're telling it, not with words, but with action, with staying put, with lived experience, that this level of suffering, this level of low-grade dissatisfaction, this is normal. This is the accepted frequency. And the subconscious, look, it's not a creative engine in the way we think. It's a tracking and stabilizing mechanism. Its primary job, from an evolutionary standpoint, is to maintain the known, to make the familiar feel safe, even if the familiar is miserable. It tracks lived normality, not conscious wishes. It's a simple equation, really. Whatever you repeatedly accept as the baseline, whatever you don't physically remove from your energy field, that becomes the programming. This is why staying in unwanted situations sends such a stronger signal than affirmations. An affirmation is, "I am abundant," but the tolerance signal is, "I am currently accepting a low bank balance and a high level of financial stress as the daily rhythm of my life." Which signal do you think is going to win? The one spoken for 5 minutes a day, or the one lived for 24 hours a day? The subconscious believes the environment, guys. It believes the environment it's in. It believes the physical space you occupy and the emotional space you inhabit more than it believes the whispered mantra you are trying to impress upon it. We talk a lot about getting comfortable with discomfort in a positive, growth-oriented way, but the dark side of that is when the discomfort becomes normalized frequency. We get used to the headache. We get used to the worry. We get used to the partner who doesn't fully respect us. We get used to the job that drains our soul, And that state, that normalized discomfort, becomes the structure that the entire identity is built upon. It becomes the water we swim in. And here's the kicker. People unconsciously protect familiar suffering. They protect it because if the suffering goes away, if the low-grade stress is removed, then who are they? The identity, the one built on the struggle, the one that has mastered the art of managing the chaos, feels threatened. It's like when you have a backache for so long. The muscles around it tense up to protect the injury, and eventually the protection is what's causing the most pain. But because it feels familiar, and because the body has organized itself around that tension, it feels safe, so you keep it. That's why awareness alone doesn't break tolerance. You can be fully aware that your relationship pattern is toxic or that your spending habits are terrible. You can intellectualize it to death. You can analyze your childhood trauma. You can do all the shadow work. But awareness is only the first step of the conscious mind. The shift happens when that awareness translates into an identity-level refusal. That's the difference between temporary pain, like the pain of a good workout, which we accept for growth, knowing the end state is strength, and identity-level acceptance. Identity-level acceptance is when you start to believe that this low standard, this stress, this drama is just how my life is, or that's just how I am, or this is just what I deserve. The moment you incorporate the suffering into the core who I am, the subconscious stabilizes the suffering. Let's look at some examples because this needs to be grounded. Take money stress. You want abundance. You do the work. But every month, the stress hits when the bills are due. What you're tolerating is the feeling of lack, the feeling of being behind, the feeling of that knot in your stomach. And because you keep meeting those bills, often with a burst of last-minute stress, the subconscious learns this is the acceptable rhythm of finance. Financial health means high-stress juggling, and I am the master of the juggle. You tolerate the feeling of financial anxiety, and reality stabilizes around that feeling, not the affirmation that you are wealthy. The tolerance is the permission slip for the stress to return, because the stress is now part of the familiar, accepted baseline. Or low standards in life. Maybe you consistently tolerate people canceling on you, or friends who don't show up for you, or a cluttered, disorganized living space, a car that always has a warning light on. The subconscious says, okay, a certain level of unreliability, a certain lack of self-respect from others, a certain level of low-grade chaos, this is the accepted standard for the environment I live in, and I am a person who handles this environment. And reality, being a mirror of that accepted standard, keeps reflecting it. You attract people who match your internal tolerance for disrespect. You attract situations that match your internal tolerance for low-grade chaos. You attract an external life that mirrors your internal standard of acceptability. It's even true in the spiritual sphere, guys, which I see all the time. People who are incredibly spiritual, they know all the concepts, they talk about manifestation, they're deep into the esoteric, but they're still stuck. Why? Because they're tolerating the internal identity of being the struggler. They're tolerating the role of being the seeker who can never quite get there. They've made the search, the struggle, the noble suffering a part of their identity, and the subconscious keeps serving up reality to match the role they're tolerating, the identity of the one who is forever seeking change, not the desires they're professing. The seeking is the normalized frequency. The whole process of real, lasting change, guys, begins when that tolerance quietly collapses. Quick pause. If this idea, this perspective on tolerance versus desire, if this is hitting home and you feel that internal nudge, do me a favor. Please take a second to like the video, leave a comment below telling me one thing you're done tolerating, and share it with someone who's been feeling stuck for a long, long time. It really helps the channel reach more people who need to hear this, and honestly, that's what this whole channel is about. Thank you. And if you want a grounded way to shift the subconscious without forcing anything, without just slapping affirmations onto an old reality, a method that is really about reprogramming tolerance, not just repeating words, I've got a free ebook called The Magic of Affirmations. It's linked in the description below. Go grab it. So, let's talk about that moment of collapse, because this is the viral insight, the key realization that changes everything. Real change doesn't happen with a burst of motivation or a huge wave of anger or a New Year's resolution, you know? Those are conscious energies, and they burn out. They are essentially high-frequency temporary spikes on a low-frequency baseline. Real change happens when something becomes internally no longer livable. Not, I wish this were different, or I hope to change this someday, but a quiet, firm, internal refusal. It's a dropping, not a forced pushing. This is the moment when the subconscious finally gets the new memo. It's not the drama of the protest, it's the calm, heavy finality of the eviction notice. Imagine you're tolerating a low-grade relationship drama. It's the constant back and forth, the uncertainty, the low vibration energy. You tell yourself, I need to leave, but you keep going back. The leaving requires motivation. The staying is fueled by tolerance and the familiarity of the pain. Then, one day, maybe nothing dramatic happens. Maybe it's just a small, insignificant text message or a slight feeling of heaviness, and suddenly something snaps inside. And you don't get angry, you don't start crying, you just feel a quiet, heavy numbness to the situation. It's a moment of clarity where you realize, I can no longer live inside this specific frequency of stress or disrespect. I am not a person who accepts this. It's a calm, internal refusal. It's the moment the energy of the situation shifts from being an uncomfortable norm to being an absolute impossibility. That's when reality shifts. When you calmly look at your bank account and you don't react with the usual panic, you react with a quiet, internal no. This is no longer the frequency I will inhabit. This is not the standard of my life. That's the moment the change process truly starts. Your motivation doesn't have to be high. Your tolerance just has to be at 0. Motivation can fluctuate, but a 0 tolerance is a fixed state. The subconscious, being the stabilizing mechanism, immediately starts trying to stabilize around the new baseline. 0 tolerance for that. It doesn't know how to build the new reality yet. That's the conscious part, but it knows it can no longer support the old one. The internal structure that supported the old financial stress, the old relationship pattern, the old self-sabotage, that structure collapses, and reality has to follow. It has to restructure itself around what you are now willing to accept as normal. Because the one thing the subconscious cannot do is force you to accept what you have truly decided is unacceptable. Think of it like a dam. All your desire is the water building up behind it. The dam is your tolerance, your identity-level acceptance of the familiar pain. You can try to bore tiny holes in the dam, affirmations. You can yell at the dam, motivation. You can even spray paint beautiful intentions on the front of the dam. But the dam only breaks when the internal structure, your tolerance, gives way. And it often gives way silently. It's an internal, energetic, firm no more. This is the power, guys. It's not about fighting your subconscious. It's about giving it an unmistakably clear signal. And the clearest signal you can ever give is not your wish list. It's your boundary. It's your refusal. It's the line in the sand that says, this particular level of discomfort, this specific drama, this familiar suffering is no longer on the menu. I'm sorry. I'm done. I am changing the parameters of what is acceptable in my life. The shift isn't about wanting something more. It's about accepting the current reality less. It's the difference between saying, I want a better relationship, and calmly saying, I will no longer tolerate this specific pattern of behavior. The second one instantly reorganizes your reality. It is a fundamental shift in identity. So the next time you feel stuck, I want you to stop asking yourself, what do I want? And instead ask the deeper, more confronting question, what am I still tolerating that is undermining my deepest desires? What low standard, what familiar pain, what financial stress level have I allowed to become normalized frequency in my life? Identify the tolerance, and then, quietly, calmly, with dignity, let it collapse. Give the internal eviction notice. Watch what happens. All right, folks, that's it. Just remember this one thing, and I want you to carry it with you this week. Your life isn't ultimately shaped by what you want, it's shaped by what you accept as normal. And the moment you stop tolerating something, the moment that tolerance quietly, firmly collapses, reality has absolutely no choice but to change. See you next week.